They said words that cut deeper than any knife, words that weren't shouted in anger but spoken with the cold certainty of truth. At least, that's what they wanted me to believe. Every insult, every dismissive glance, every whisper behind my back carried the same message: you are nothing. I can still remember the way it felt when they laughed at my dreams, the way their eyes rolled when I dared to speak about what I wanted to become. They didn't just call me worthless, they made me live it, breathe it, carry it like a mark of shame on my skin. I was surrounded by people who measured worth by status, money, and approval, and in their eyes, I had none of those. I was invisible until it came time to make fun of me, then suddenly everyone could see me clearly. Their laughter wasn't just noise, it was a reminder that in their world, I didn't belong. At first, I tried to change myself to fit their expectations. I thought if I could just be what they wanted, if I could talk like them, dress like them, maybe then they'd stop calling me names, maybe they'd stop looking at me with pity or disgust. But no matter how much I tried, it was never enough. My efforts became fuel for their amusement. They said I was desperate for attention, that I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, that I was reaching too high for someone like me. Every time I stood up for myself, they twisted it into a joke. I stopped defending myself because what was the point of fighting a battle where the enemy enjoyed watching you lose? Their words became my cage. Slowly, I started believing that maybe they were right, maybe I really was worthless. That was the heaviest part of it all, not their insults, but the way they made me doubt my own worth. It's strange how pain changes you. It doesn't happen overnight. It starts quietly, when you stop talking as much, when you avoid eye contact, when you start apologizing for existing. That's what I did. I shrank myself, piece by piece, to make others comfortable. There were nights I'd lie awake replaying every cruel thing they ever said. It was like a movie on repeat, and I couldn't turn it off. I wondered why their voices had so much power over me. Why did I care so much about people who didn't care about me? Why did their approval matter more than my own peace? I realized that somewhere along the way, I had given them control over my emotions, my confidence, my identity. They didn't even have to try anymore. Their words echoed in my head even when they weren't around. It wasn't just about what they said, it was about what I let it mean. Every "you can't," every "you'll never make it," every "you're not good enough" became a truth I lived by, until one day, I got tired of living in their version of me. That was the moment the shift began, quietly and invisibly. I started listening to the same words differently. "You're worthless" stopped sounding like a fact and started sounding like a challenge. "You'll never make it" started feeling like a dare. I realized that their cruelty wasn't about me at all, it was about their need to feel superior, their fear of seeing someone they underestimated rise above them. People like that don't want you to fail because you're weak, they want you to fail because your strength exposes their insecurity. Once I understood that, their voices lost some of their power. It didn't happen all at once, but day by day, I stopped letting them define me. The weight of their words didn't disappear, but I learned to carry it differently. I used it as motivation instead of a burden. Still, the memories stayed. They reminded me of how easy it is to break someone with words, how quickly confidence can be destroyed when people decide your worth for you. I began noticing how often we label others without understanding their battles. It made me realize how cruel the world can be to anyone who doesn't fit its idea of success. When you're at your lowest, people don't see your potential, they see your weakness. It's easy to tell someone to ignore hurtful words, but it's not that simple. Words stay. They grow roots in your mind and shape how you see yourself. They can make you doubt your own voice, your own purpose. I spent years trying to unlearn the things others made me believe. Sometimes I still hear their voices in my head when I make mistakes, when I fail, when I start something new. But now I recognize them for what they are, echoes of the past, not truths. I learned that worth isn't something others give you, it's something you decide for yourself, even when no one else sees it. The people who called me worthless never understood that their words were building the very fire that would one day burn through every limit they placed on me. And though those moments were painful, they became the foundation of everything that followed. The more they tried to push me down, the stronger my desire to rise became. Every insult became fuel, every failure a lesson, every rejection a redirection. The weight of their words didn't crush me, it molded me. It shaped the person who would later make them eat those very same words. But before that transformation, there was a long, silent war fought inside me, between the person they said I was, and the person I knew I could become. Pain is a strange teacher. When people humiliate you, something inside you changes in ways you can't fully explain. Their laughter echoes longer than their words, and the shame they throw at you clings to your skin until it becomes part of you. At first, humiliation feels like fire burning through your chest, leaving behind only ashes of self-respect. But in those ashes, something begins to move, a quiet spark that refuses to die. That spark is anger, but not the kind that screams or destroys. It's the kind that stays silent, waiting, watching, growing. It's the kind of anger that transforms into determination, the kind that says, "I'll show you who I really am." Every time they humiliate you, they think. There comes a moment when humiliation stops being just pain and starts becoming fuel. You begin to see their laughter differently. It no longer hurts the same way because now, it serves a purpose. Every insult becomes a reason to work harder. Every smirk becomes a promise you make to yourself, a promise that one day, you'll rise so high they'll have no choice but to look up. You stop wasting energy trying to make them understand your worth and instead pour it into becoming something undeniable. The same words that once made you feel small now echo in your mind as motivation. You replay them, not to cry, but to remind yourself of what you're fighting for. You stop asking for validation. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop looking for understanding. You realize the only way to answer humiliation is with success that speaks louder than their mockery ever could. Turning humiliation into determination isn't easy. It's a lonely process. There's no applause when you're struggling in silence. No one sees the nights you spend overthinking, the tears you hide, the frustration of constantly being overlooked. People only see results, never the war behind them. You learn to fight quietly. You learn to survive without encouragement. You learn to keep moving, even when your mind screams that you're not good enough. That's how determination is born, not in comfort, but in chaos. It's born when you have nothing left to lose, when the only way forward is through your own pain. Each day becomes a small act of rebellion. Waking up, working, improving, all of it becomes a way of saying you were wrong about me. There's a shift that happens deep inside when humiliation transforms into drive. You begin to crave progress more than pity. You start loving silence because it means you're focused. You start loving the struggle because it reminds you that you're still fighting. The people who once made fun of you fade into the background as you become obsessed with growth. You stop reek. There's power in humiliation if you learn how to hold it. Most people run from it, trying to hide their scars, pretending they were never hurt. But you start using it. You remember every moment they mocked you, every smirk, every whispered insult, and you store it somewhere deep inside. Not to hate them, but to remind yourself why you can't give up. Their laughter becomes the rhythm of your persistence. Every time you're tempted to quit, you hear them again, and something in you refuses to give them that satisfaction. You can almost see their faces, their disbelief when they realize the person they humiliated has become everything they never thought possible. That thought alone pushes you to keep going. Humiliation doesn't weaken you anymore, it becomes your secret weapon. When people call you worthless, they expect you to crumble. They expect their words to define your limits. But when you turn that pain into power, they lose their control. You no longer live to prove them wrong, you live to prove yourself right. The fire that started as anger transforms into purpose. You begin to understand that you don't need revenge in the traditional sense, you just need to become so strong, so capable, that their opinions no longer matter. You learn that the best way to silence them is to rise so high they can't reach you anymore. The very pain they caused becomes the foundation of your strength. Without realizing it, they become the architects of your success story. There's a deep satisfaction that comes from transformation. It's not loud or boastful, it's calm. It's the peace of knowing that you endured what was meant to break you and turned it into something unstoppable. The humiliation that once haunted you becomes your identity's turning point. It teaches you patience, discipline, and self-control. It teaches you to rely on yourself, to stop depending on others for validation. You start appreciating small victories, each one a reminder that you're moving forward. Even failure feels different now, it no longer defines you, it teaches you. You no longer fear falling because you've already survived the worst kind of pain, being laughed at by those who never believed in you. Humiliation also changes how you see people. You stop admiring those who pretend to be perfect and start respecting those who have scars. You recognize pain in others because you've lived it yourself. You become more empathetic, but also stronger, wiser, and sharper. You can spot false praise and fake kindness easily because you've seen what cruelty looks like up close. You learn to keep your circle small, your plans quieter, and your energy protected. You don't waste time proving yourself anymore because you've already done that in silence. The focus shifts from them to you, from their laughter to your mission, from their words to your actions. And with each passing day, you feel the change more clearly. What used to break you now builds you. What used to shame you now sharpens you. You realize that humiliation was never your ending, it was your beginning. Without it, you might have never found your strength. Without it, you might have stayed comfortable, unaware of how much power was sleeping inside you. They tried to bury you under their words, but they didn't know you were a seed. They thought they ended you with their mockery, but all they did was plant the roots of your rise. Every cruel word became a stepping stone, every humiliation a silent vow. Rebuilding self-worth after being torn down is one of the hardest things a person can ever do. It doesn't happen in a single moment of realization or after a grand act of defiance, it begins quietly, in the dark, when no one is watching, when you're standing in front of the mirror trying to remember who you were before the world convinced you that you were nothing. At first, it feels impossible. You've spent so long believing their voices that your own feels like a whisper you can barely hear. Every time you try to speak confidence into yourself, doubt interrupts. You question every compliment, reject every opportunity, sabotage your own progress because deep inside, you still carry the belief that you don't deserve anything good. That belief, planted by others, takes roots so deep that even after you walk away from the people who hurt you, their words still haunt you. They echo inside you until you start mistaking their cruelty for truth. But somewhere in that silence, a small part of you refuses to die, the part that remembers your dreams, your laughter, your strength before they tried to break you. That's where the rebuilding begins, not in defiance, but in remembering. You start by doing small things. You wake up and choose not to listen to the voice that tells you you're worthless. You force yourself to take one small step toward the life you once wanted, even if it feels meaningless. At first, it doesn't feel like healing. It feels like pretending. You smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You work hard, but you don't feel proud. You tell yourself you're strong, but you don't believe it. Still, you keep doing it. You keep pretending until, slowly, the pretending starts to feel real. You begin to notice small changes, the way your shoulders stand straighter, the way your voice doesn't shake as much when you speak, the way you look at your reflection and hold your gaze just a little longer. It's not victory yet, but it's progress. You learn that self-worth is. You stop chasing validation from others because you start realizing how fragile it is. You've seen how easily people can take it away, how quickly they can turn love into judgment. So, instead, you begin building validation from within. It feels strange at first to compliment yourself, to appreciate your own efforts, to tell yourself I'm proud of you even when no one else says it. But that's how you reclaim power, by taking back the ability to define your own value. You learn that your worth isn't measured by how many people like you, or how much you've achieved, but by how much strength it takes to keep going when no one believes in you. The journey of rebuilding self-worth teaches you patience like nothing else. It's not a straight path. Some days you'll feel strong, other days you'll feel like collapsing again under the weight of old memories. But even on those days, you're still moving forward because choosing to get up again is its own kind of victory. Then comes the stage where you begin to separate your identity from your pain. You start to see that what they said about you, all the insults, all the rejections, were reflections of who they were, not who you are. You begin to realize that their cruelty came from their own insecurity, their need to feel superior, their fear of seeing someone rise above them. You learn to forgive yourself for believing their lies for so long. You learn to stop punishing yourself for the things you couldn't control. It's a slow process, peeling away every layer of doubt they left behind. Sometimes, you'll think you've healed, and then something small, a tone of voice, a word, a memory, will bring all the pain rushing back. But this time, instead of falling apart, you'll know how to hold yourself together. You'll know how to speak kindly to yourself, how to remind yourself that their words no longer define you. In rebuilding self-worth, solitude becomes your teacher. You learn to be alone without feeling lonely. You also start to understand that self-worth isn't about being perfect. It's not about never failing again or never feeling insecure. It's about knowing that even when you fall, you still matter. It's about being gentle with yourself when you make mistakes. You stop demanding perfection and start embracing growth. You stop saying I'm not enough and start saying I'm learning. You stop looking at yourself through the lens of their judgment and start seeing yourself through the eyes of compassion. It's in those small shifts of perspective that your confidence begins to return, not the fragile confidence that depends on praise, but the quiet kind that no one can take away. And while the process is lonely, it's also powerful. You begin to attract peace instead of chaos, purpose instead of approval, and people who see your worth instead of trying to question it. You no longer chase anyone's attention because you finally understand that you never had to earn your value, you were born with it. You realize that everything they said about you was just noise, and your silence, your persistence, your growth, that's your answer. The world that once called you worthless now sees a version of you that cannot be broken, because you've already been shattered and rebuilt stronger. Sometimes, rebuilding self-worth also means setting boundaries. You learn to say no without guilt, to walk away without explaining, to protect your energy from those who drain it. You stop feeling responsible for fixing everyone and start focusing on yourself. That shift is where true strength lies, in choosing yourself unapologetically. You learn that self-love isn't selfish, it's survival. It's what allows you to keep standing even when everything around you tries to pull you down. You realize that the version of yourself that once begged for validation no longer exists. You've outgrown the need to prove anything. You've built something unshakable inside you, self-respect. Rebuilding self-worth doesn't mean you forget what happened. You'll always remember the moments when people made you feel small, the times you cried silently, the days you doubted your purpose. But those memories stop hurting the same way. They become reminders of how far you've come, how much you've grown. They become the evidence of your resilience. Every scar turns into a story, every wound into wisdom. You start seeing yourself not as a victim, but as a survivor. You start walking differently, speaking differently, living differently. You stop carrying shame and start wearing strength. The same world that once made you question your existence now has to face the version of you that found peace within the storm. And though the journey is far from over, you begin to realize something profound. Self-worth was never something you had to find in others, it was something you had to remember within yourself. All along, it was there, waiting beneath the pain, beneath the doubt, beneath the voices that tried to drown it. You just had to dig deep enough to uncover it again. The same heart they called weak now beats with quiet power, the same mind they said would fail now dreams without fear, and the same soul they tried to crush now glows with a light they can no longer dim. Rising through hard work, persistence, and self-belief begins when there is nothing left to depend on but yourself. When the world turns its back, when every door seems to close, and when you are left standing in the ruins of what others said you could never rebuild, that's where the real journey starts. It doesn't start with applause or confidence, it starts with trembling hands, tired eyes, and a heart that refuses to stop beating even when it's broken. You start working not because you believe you'll succeed, but because you have no other choice but to try. You start from the ground, from places where nobody notices your effort, where your sacrifices go unseen. There's no glory in the beginning, Jew. Hard work doesn't feel noble when you're in it. It feels endless, exhausting, and often unrewarded. You wake up early, push yourself past limits, fail more times than you can count, and still have to face the world with a smile. The people who once called you worthless aren't watching your struggle, they only notice success when it's visible. But you learn to stop working for their attention. You work for yourself. You work because the act of moving forward itself becomes survival. Every late night, every rejection, every disappointment becomes a lesson. You learn to turn frustration into focus. You stop waiting for motivation because you realize motivation fades. What truly keeps you going is discipline, the promise you made to yourself to never go back to who you were before. Persistence becomes your closest ally. There are moments when quitting feels easier, when the effort seems pointless, when progress moves so slowly you can barely see it. But something inside you whispers to keep going anyway. You start to understand that success isn't one big leap, it's 1,000 small steps, each one taken when no one is watching, when no one claps, when no one believes. You learn to trust the process even when you can't see the results. Some days the weight of failure feels unbearable, but you keep pushing because giving up would mean proving them right. You can't allow that. You've come too far, endured too much, and survived too many nights of doubt to let it all end without seeing what happens if you don't stop. There's a certain loneliness in persistence. People see your effort as obsession, your focus as arrogance, your dreams as impossible. You start losing connections because not everyone understands your hunger. But you also realize that this isolation is necessary. Growth demands space, space to fail, space to think, space to rebuild. You begin to appreciate solitude because it's in those quiet hours, when you're working alone, that your strength is forged. Yo. Self-belief becomes the most important part of this journey. At first, you don't have much of it. After being told for so long that you weren't enough, believing in yourself feels unnatural. You question every step, doubt every idea, and compare yourself to everyone who seems ahead. But slowly, as you continue working, something changes. You start to see small signs, a task done better than before, a challenge faced without fear, a skill improved through effort. Each small win adds a little more belief, and that belief grows until it becomes unshakable. You realize that believing in yourself doesn't mean you never doubt again, it means you trust yourself even through the doubt. You start talking to yourself differently. You replace "I can't" with "I'll try," "I'm scared" with "I'm learning," and "I failed" with "I'm growing." As you rise, the world begins to shift. The same people who once ignored you start noticing. The same ones who called you worthless begin asking how you did it. But by then, you've changed. Their approval no longer holds power. You no longer need them to see your worth because you've already seen it yourself. You've built it with your own hands, through sleepless nights, through silent tears, through relentless effort. You realize that every drop of sweat, every moment of exhaustion, every time you pushed through fear, it all meant something. Hard work becomes more than just effort, it becomes identity. You start taking pride in the process, not just the outcome. You understand that true success isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving to yourself that you were always capable. The road to rising is not straight or smooth. It's filled with setbacks, betrayals, and moments when your confidence shatters completely. There are times when you'll fall back into old habits of self-doubt, times when your progress feels erased by one mistake. But each time you rise again, you rise stronger. You stop seeing failure as an end and start seeing. There's a quiet power in consistency. While others chase shortcuts, you keep building brick by brick. You no longer need to rush. You understand that lasting success is built slowly, with care, with endurance. You start trusting timing instead of forcing it. You start embracing challenges instead of avoiding them. The fear that once controlled you loses its grip because you've faced it too many times to be afraid of it anymore. You learn that confidence isn't given, it's earned through repetition, through showing up every single day, even when you don't feel ready. That's how belief in yourself becomes unbreakable. It's not something you wake up with, it's something you build through every act of persistence. You notice how your mindset changes. You stop focusing on what you lack and start appreciating what you have. You stop complaining about how far you still have to go and start being proud of how far you've already come. You realize that success is not a destination, it's the act of continuing. Each challenge that once intimidated you now excites you, because you see it as another opportunity to grow. You start living differently, with purpose, with gratitude, with quiet strength. You stop seeking external validation because your self-belief becomes enough. And as you rise through your hard work, persistence, and self-belief, you start to inspire others without even trying. People begin to see in you what you once couldn't see in yourself: resilience, courage, and fire. They may not know the battles you fought, but they can feel the strength that came from them. You become living proof that no matter how many times you're told you're worthless, no matter how many times life knocks you down, you can rebuild yourself with your own hands. You learn that real revenge is not in anger or destruction, but in success born from persistence and belief. The rise isn't about glory, it's about redemption. It's about transforming every "you can't" into "I did," every FA. Success as the sweetest form of revenge doesn't come suddenly, it comes after years of silent struggle, when every wound you endured turns into wisdom and every tear shed becomes fuel. It starts when you stop chasing people who never believed in you and begin chasing the version of yourself that they said could never exist. Success born from pain carries a different weight. It's not about trophies or recognition, it's about reclaiming everything that was stolen from your confidence. You remember every insult, every laugh, every moment they made you feel like you didn't belong, and without realizing it, those memories begin to drive you. Not with bitterness, but with hunger. You start working not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right, to prove that their words were lies. You start showing up every day, quietly, persistently, without fanfare, and every small victory becomes a private act of rebellion against the version of you they wanted to destroy. There's something intoxicating about success when you've been underestimated for too long. It's not just achievement, it's redemption. It's walking through the same places where you were once ignored and seeing the shock in their eyes when they realize you made it without them. It's standing tall in front of those who once doubted you and feeling no need to explain anything. They see it in your silence, in your confidence, in the calm way you carry yourself. Success becomes your voice, speaking louder than any argument ever could. You don't have to remind them of what they said, your presence is reminder enough. Every time they look at you now, they remember the things they once said, and that realization burns deeper than any revenge you could ever plan. But the journey toward that success isn't glamorous. It's lonely, exhausting, and filled with moments when you question everything. There are nights when you feel the same pain that started it all, when you wonder if the effort is even worth it. You remember. There's a moment, often small and quiet, when you realize you've crossed the line between surviving and succeeding. It might be a single achievement, a recognition, a moment of self-pride, but it hits you deeply. You realize that you don't need to shout about your success, it speaks for itself. It changes the energy around you. The people who once dismissed you now study your every move, trying to understand how you did it. Some come back pretending they always believed in you, while others stay silent, hoping you'll forget how they treated you. But you don't need to confront them. Your success already has. You carry yourself differently now, not with arrogance, but with quiet power. The person they tried to bury has grown into someone unshakable, someone whose worth no longer depends on anyone's validation. The sweetness of success lies not in revenge itself, but in realization. You see that you didn't need their approval to rise. You didn't need their help to heal. Every obstacle they placed in your path became a stepping stone. Every humiliation became a lesson in strength. You start to see the bigger picture, that their cruelty played a role in shaping you. Without them, maybe you wouldn't have fought this hard, or discovered how much power was hidden inside you. The pain they caused didn't destroy you, it refined you. It forced you to build yourself from the ground up, stronger and wiser than before. That's why success feels so sweet, not because they suffer from it, but because you finally see how far you've come from the person they tried to break. You begin to understand that revenge through success is silent, patient, and powerful. It doesn't announce itself, it arrives naturally, through persistence, through discipline, through refusing to give up. It's not about rubbing it in their faces, it's about walking past them without needing to say a word. Your growth itself becomes the proof that you were always more than what they thought. You no longer CRA. And when success finally comes, when you achieve what they said you couldn't, it feels surreal. You think back to the moments when you doubted yourself, when their voices seemed louder than your own, when you cried quietly so no one would see your weakness. All those nights, all that silence, all those sacrifices, now make sense. Every struggle becomes part of your story, every failure a necessary step. You realize that the path to success was never about speed, it was about endurance. You won not because you were lucky or gifted, but because you refused to stop. That persistence becomes your victory, that strength becomes your legacy. You'll find that the more you succeed, the less you care about revenge. You outgrow the need to prove anything to anyone. You start living for yourself, not for the satisfaction of making them regret. But even so, their regret comes naturally. It shows in their eyes when they see you thriving, in their silence when your name is mentioned, in their forced smiles when they realize they can't reach you anymore. They can't touch you, not because you've hidden, but because you've elevated yourself beyond their reach. That's what success does, it separates you from your past without bitterness. It allows you to stand in the same place where you once fell and feel nothing but gratitude for how far you've climbed. The sweetest part of success as revenge is the peace that follows it. It's not about celebration or revenge fantasies, it's about finally feeling free. You no longer carry their words as chains around your heart. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You have turned every insult into fuel, every setback into a step forward. You've rewritten the story they tried to control. You look around and realize that everything you have now, the strength, the respect, the peace, came from the pain they gave you. And in that moment, you understand that revenge was never about hurting them, it was about healing yourself so deeply. Your success becomes a mirror they can't look into without seeing their own failure to destroy you. It becomes your armor, your justice, your proof that the universe has its own balance. You don't need to say a word because your achievements speak volumes. You've built yourself into the person they said you could never be, and that truth alone is enough. That's why success, when born from pain and persistence, tastes sweeter than anything else, because it's not just a win over others, it's a win over every doubt, every insult, every fear that ever tried to keep you from becoming who you were meant to be. The transformation from broken to unstoppable begins quietly, almost invisibly, long before anyone else notices it. It starts when the pain becomes too heavy to carry, and yet you keep moving anyway. It begins in the silence of nights when you cry yourself to sleep, in the mornings when you force yourself to stand, even when every part of you wants to give up. At first, it feels like survival, nothing more. You're not thinking about strength or growth or victory, you're just trying to breathe through the weight of everything that fell apart. The people who called you worthless left scars that you can't erase, and those scars follow you everywhere. They live in your thoughts, in the way you second-guess yourself, in the fear that no matter how hard you try, you'll never be enough. But something shifts inside when you get tired of being broken. There comes a moment when you stop looking at your pain as a curse and start seeing it as a challenge. You realize that no one is coming to save you, that healing won't come through apologies or revenge, but through the quiet decision to rebuild yourself from the ruins they left behind. That's where transformation begins, not in the absence of pain, but in the decision to rise despite it. You stop waiting for closure, for validation, for them to see your worth, and instead you turn inward. You start to rediscover yourself. The journey from broken to unstoppable is not about erasing what happened, it's about rewriting its meaning. You start seeing your wounds not as signs of weakness but as proof of survival. You realize that being broken doesn't mean being defeated, it means you've been tested in ways others can't imagine. There's power in that kind of pain, the kind that forces you to face yourself, to sit with your demons, to rebuild your identity from scratch. You learn to rely on your own strength because you've seen what happens when you rely on others. You stop chasing love that hurts and start nurturing the kind that heals, the love that comes from within. You stop apologizing for who you are and start taking pride in the person you've become. The transformation happens slowly, quietly, through countless small choices, the choice to try again after failure, to believe again after betrayal, to love again after heartbreak. You start walking differently, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The same places that once felt suffocating now remind you of how far you've come. The same people who once looked down on you now look up in disbelief. The same challenges that once terrified you now excite you. You no longer measure yourself by their standards or seek validation from their approval. You know your worth now, not because someone told you, but because you earned it through every battle you survived. The version of you that once trembled in fear is gone, in their place stands someone unshakable, grounded, and fiercely aware of their own value. You start to realize that true power isn't loud, it's calm, steady, and deeply rooted in self-belief. You don't need to shout to prove you've changed, your presence alone says everything. As the transformation deepens, your priorities shift. You stop focusing on revenge, on being seen, or on proving anyone wrong. You focus on peace, on growth, on creating a life that reflects your strength instead of your scars. The transformation is not about proving you're better than anyone else, it's about realizing you're stronger than you ever thought possible. It's about knowing that everything that was meant to break you actually built you. The pain that once silenced you has become your greatest teacher. The rejection that once humiliated you has become your motivation. The betrayal that once destroyed your trust has taught you self-respect. You've outgrown your old fears, your old doubts, your old limits. You've become unstoppable not because the world changed, but because you did. You found power in places you never thought to look, in your pain, in your patience, in your perseverance. You've turned every you can't into I did, every failure into a foundation, every scar into a symbol of survival. And now, when they see you standing strong, calm, and unshaken, they finally understand, you were never worthless. You were only waiting to become who you were always meant to be.